A pregnant woman, 9 months along, struggles to survive at sea, knowing that one wrong move could turn her into fish food. Without food or fresh water, how long can she endure? Flashback to a month earlier, Mia was an expectant mother about to give birth. Since the implementation of strict European measures, resources in her country became scarce, sparking war and chaos. To escape this turmoil, Mia and her husband planned to smuggle themselves into another country. Their journey was filled with obstacles. First, they encountered a corrupt smuggler who demanded more money at the last moment, forcing them to pawn their wedding rings to secure their passage. Finally, they boarded the vehicle, but due to overcrowding, Mia's husband was forcibly removed and placed in a separate container, identified by the number 107. Through a bullet hole, Mia saw her husband being taken away. He reassured her over the phone, reminding her to guard their food and water and trust no one. To save battery, they reluctantly ended the call, unaware that their nightmare had only just begun. While crossing a border checkpoint, a rebel officer targeted their vehicle, suspecting hidden stowaways. The passengers hid in secret compartments and survived the first inspection. However, the officer, sensing something was wrong, tricked the passengers by promising safety to those who voluntarily surrendered. Remembering her husband's warning, Mia climbed to the top of the cargo and remained silent. Tragically, others fell for the officer's lies and were slaughtered. Mia held back her screams and later wept uncontrollably, texting her husband to stay hidden, but she never received a reply. Exhausted, Mia fell asleep and woke to violent shaking. Their cargo ship was caught in a massive storm. Mia screamed for help, but the crew, desperate to save themselves, ignored her cries. When she regained consciousness, she found herself adrift at sea, her container filling with water through bullet holes. Desperate, she searched through boxes inside the container and found vodka, sweatshirts, plastic containers, and electronics. She sealed the holes with duct tape to slow the water leak. Suddenly, she heard shouts for help and saw through a hole that her husband's container had sunk into the ocean. Mia panicked but could do nothing. Her unborn child gave her the strength to keep fighting. One night, Mia woke up from a nightmare, imagining water engulfing her. But reality was not much better. She discovered more plastic materials and tape to reinforce the seals and drained water using containers and tubing. After 2.5 hours of effort, she built a temporary shelter inside the container, preparing herself for the battles ahead. After feeling hungry, Mia began to check the supplies she had collected: a bottle of fresh water, a piece of bread, a thermos, an electric drill, and some tools. With limited food and water, she had to carefully manage her energy. 2 days passed, and Mia's phone suddenly rang. It was her husband. He explained that he had been scammed by agents and abandoned on the roadside before leaving the city. Mia told him about her situation, but since her exact location was unknown, her husband could only comfort her and promise to find her. The weather at sea changed quickly, and Mia began experiencing labor pains. She prayed for more time, but what was inevitable couldn't be avoided. At midnight, thunderstorms struck, and the container was violently shaken by waves. As her contractions worsened, her water broke. In desperation, Mia took off her clothes, gripped the ropes inside the container tightly, and began to deliver the baby. Fortunately, she safely gave birth to her child. After the storm passed, Mia cut the umbilical cord and stored the placenta in a sealed container. Worried about producing enough milk, she ate more food, and luckily her milk supply was sufficient. Mother and daughter survived the toughest period. To ensure proper ventilation, Mia attempted to drill a hole in the container for sunlight and fresh air. However, the drill ran out of power before she could finish. The container's walls were too sturdy for her to break through with her strength. Undeterred, she used a folding knife to slowly cut through the joints, injuring her hands in the process. With no energy left and all food consumed, Mia couldn't sleep due to hunger. In a desperate attempt to survive, she ate the placenta stored earlier. The next day, she continued cutting the joints, but the blade of her folding knife broke against the hard walls. After multiple failed attempts, Mia collapsed emotionally. Her mind started to falter, and she even considered drinking seawater out of desperation. Fortunately, her rationality stopped her. While struggling, she noticed condensation droplets forming due to temperature differences at night. Though rusty, she drank the water to stay alive. Soon after, it began to rain. Mia collected rainwater in the sealed container, securing a precious supply of fresh water. After partially recovering her strength, Mia's mental state improved. Using a can opening technique, she tied a rope to the partially cut container panel and pulled it with all her strength. At last, she succeeded. For the first time in a week, Mia felt the warmth of sunlight. Climbing onto the container with her daughter, she saw nothing but endless ocean. Despite the hopelessness, she remained determined to survive. While changing her baby's diaper, Mia noticed fish were attracted to the waste. She fashioned a fishing tool and repeatedly tried to catch fish, but failed every time. Frustrated and in tears, Mia lay on the container's roof, only to see a plane flying overhead. She rushed back inside, found a mirror, and tried to use it to signal the plane. However, in her haste, she ignored her safety and injured her leg. Despite the pain, she held up the mirror, but the plane didn't notice her. Returning to the container, Mia quickly treated her wound by disinfecting it with electrical components and copper wires. Without anesthesia, she stitched the wound herself, nearly fainting from the pain. Her daughter's presence gave her strength to endure. Learning from earlier failures, Mia wove a fishing net using headphones and placed a diaper inside as bait. This time, she finally succeeded in catching fish. As her fishing skills improved, Mia no longer had to worry about running out of food. Her life was gradually getting better. During her free time, she would write messages asking for help and place them in a preservation box, throwing them into the sea, hoping for rescue. In the evenings, she would take out a homemade alcohol lamp to warm her daughter, while looking at her husband's photo and telling stories of their past. Her little girl listened attentively, and it comforted Mia's tired heart. That evening, Mia heard a noise coming from the mast. She took her daughter and went outside to check, finding that it was the preservation box floating back. Just as she was feeling disappointed, her phone, which hadn't had a signal in a long time, suddenly rang. It was her husband calling. However, what Mia couldn't bear to accept was that this phone call was her husband's final goodbye. It turned out that during their escape, her husband had been discovered by the rebels. Although he managed to escape, his injuries were too severe, and he had reached the end of his life. Fortunately, he managed to call his wife and learn that their daughter had been born. He encouraged Mia to keep fighting for survival. After expressing his longing for their daughter, the phone died. From then on, the family was forever separated. Mia's heart ached as if it had been torn apart, but for the sake of her daughter, she had to keep going. After 26 days, with the seawater continually corroding, the water inside the container grew higher and higher. Mia used the preservation box and some wooden planks to make a raft. Occasionally, she saw seagulls, which meant they were not far from land. That evening, the container completely broke apart, and seawater poured in. Mia could have left immediately, but she realized that the chocolate her husband had given her before he passed away had been accidentally left behind inside the container. It wasn't just a gift, it carried the unspoken love between the couple. Despite the danger, Mia decided to retrieve it. As she approached, the ropes from the container tangled around her legs. In a life-threatening moment, she took a deep breath, cut the ropes, and managed to swim to the surface. However, she found that her daughter was nowhere to be seen. The sea fog obscured her vision. Just when Mia was about to give up, a huge whale appeared from the distance. After this ordeal, Mia had no energy left. She threw the last fish into the sea. She had no strength left to throw the last fishtail. All she could do was grab onto the life raft, drifting with the current. Not long after, a large group of seagulls, attracted by the fishtail, flew towards her. A fishing boat followed the seagulls and came near the life raft. A woman quickly pulled the lifeline and discovered that inside the raft was a baby. As they wondered how a baby could have appeared in the sea, the woman noticed a rope. As the rope was slowly pulled in, Mia surfaced from the water. They hurriedly dragged Mia onto the boat. After urgent treatment, Mia miraculously survived. Once Mia confirmed she was truly rescued, she couldn't hold back her tears of joy. This movie depicts a highly unreal survival at sea, delivering a profoundly shocking performance by a woman, letting the audience deeply feel the fragility and strength of life. Although some plot points may not be entirely reasonable, one cannot deny the greatness of a mother's love. After all, a mother's strength comes from her boundless life force, which carries the responsibility of creating life. The film's content also invites deep reflection on the harshness of the real world. Some enjoy stability, while others search for hope in difficult circumstances. Death may be just a moment, but life is a continuous journey. So don't worry about small matters. Dare to face life and enjoy every beautiful moment it offers. That's it for today's movie. We'll meet again next time.